The lone tough talker, Curtis Wright. There is no substitute.
First cup of coffee, and I've got Curtis Wright, so I'm pumped.
It's gonna be a good morning, good morning meeting. We're gonna have a great time together.
Hey, this is Tino the Liberal.
Hey, Tino the Liberal.
I listen to you every morning.
And you're a liberal?
I'm a liberal. I'm a diehard liberal.
Well, sir, you got to take over the Democratic Party then. We're back live here on The Beat. I'm Curtis Wright. I've got my second cup of coffee, so get something hot. We've got lots more to talk about. It's 8:35 across southeastern North Carolina, and beautiful weather out there. I'm not sure what's happening this weekend. Keep it tuned to WFNC 640 AM, WAAV 980 AM. We'll keep you up to date on the changing weather conditions and, of course, the news. And you can follow us online at curtiswrightonline.com. Kurt's Cam is up and running, and also in real time on Facebook and Twitter. Are we tweeting, Tyler? Are we tweeting? Tyler is always tweeting, so make sure you're on Twitter as well. He ran last time for the 7th Congressional District, or was in the race for a while, and in the debate. He's in the debate this time. He's in the race. We'll find out more officially about his candidacy. He is on the Republican side running in the 7th Congressional District race. There, of course, that seat is held right now by a man who promised us, if you give me your vote, I will not run more than 6 terms. He lied to us. He continues to lie to us about that and will not keep his promise. That is Representative Mike McIntyre. He also tells us, Mr. McIntyre, that he is a conservative doing missionary work inside the Democratic Party. That is his so-called excuse or explanation of why he associates with a party that works every day against everything he has told us he believes in. Very interesting situation. And now I believe with the new lines that are drawn, he doesn't even live in the district. So I'm not, of course he can do that under our laws, but I'm not sure how this all plays out with Mr. Mike McIntyre. Running also is Ilario Pontano, and my guest this morning on Mike, Tim Wilkes. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Curtis. Thank you for having us.
So again, and I know you and I do this when we're out and about, and I'm emceeing for these different events, but for our folks out there that don't know much about your background or may not know about your candidacy, please, let's start with that. Tell them who you are and about your background here in North Carolina.
As you clearly stated, my name is Tim Wilkes. I am a Christian, husband, father of 7 children. Veteran from Desert Storm, spent just shy of 11 years in the Army, and also received my health care as a disabled vet at the VA healthcare clinics. So we've been rooted in North Carolina, again, for about 7 years this time around, really enjoying it down here by the beach.
And you live in... but you live in...
I live in Supply, North Carolina.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
You live down here. I always ask this question, newcomers or not, why step forward at this time? Why run for this office?
Well, my heart is still driven toward making sure that our children have a good future. Personally, I always kept that effort to make sure and keep my life out of politics when I was younger. Had very much distaste for it just in general. And as life went on, I started noticing how if we didn't get involved, our kids would have no future. And I kept looking for people who were going to represent me, and there isn't any out there. Mm-hmm. So I stepped forward and said, okay, if we can't find somebody that's going to represent a working man, somebody that's going to have to budget, have to run their life by a certain code, if they're willing to be successful, then I will step forward and I will make a difference.
Now, this time around, Senator David Rouser has entered the race, State Senator David Rouser from Johnston County, which is a long way from where we are right now because of the new lines. He is supported by, a group of people that I would call, there's a deal that's made. Let's just make sure our listeners know this. There was a deal made by a number of newcomers and others to support David Rouser for various reasons, and those will come out during the campaign. A deal was made. So to me, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Mr. Pantano's back in the race. He is supported by, a lot of folks in the Republican Party here, but also nationally. He has a lot of support nationally because of his exposure. How do you, Tim, hope to get anywhere close to the amount of votes necessary to win in a primary?
Well,
I mean, your message is conservative.
Yes, sir.
I should say, actually, Christian conservative. You're a man of faith. You're a man who stands up for 90%, unless I'm wrong, of every value that Mr. Pantano has and Mr. Rouser espouses. How do you hope to overcome those two formidable forces?
Well, there's two things I believe. Number one is this is where I feel like I'm led. It was very strong. It was over a period of time. I had family members who were telling me not to get involved because of the dirt and the muckraking, and who came up to me and said, you need to run. You need to run because we need somebody like you in office who's going to hold them accountable and who's going to speak for the people. The second thing is shoe leather. We're going to work it. And endorsements are great, and that's wonderful to have somebody with a big name endorsing you. But I want the endorsement of the people. If I'm going to represent the people, I need the endorsement of the people, and I need them to get involved.
But let's go further, and please, help. You and I have known each other, so yeah, and you know how I have supported your voice in the debate. If there's support the second time around, then there would be lots of volunteers, there'd be offices, there'd be money. The bottom line is people will give money because people even say to you, you have to take this money. You have to take it because we know how campaigns. You can't get your message out in such a large, diverse district as the 7th District without putting ads out. I mean, you cannot be everywhere. I mean, I know what you say, shoes on the ground. I understand that. I've been involved in those type of campaigns, but I've been involved in those at the local level where you can actually pull those off. Mr. Santorum is trying to say that he's doing that, but the bottom line is he's got tens of millions of dollars behind him. It's not as shoelace as he says. But there's not that organization. There's not the offices. There's not the money in the coffers for ads.
You're absolutely correct. There is no money per se in the account other than what we've put in ourselves. We look at these things. I have a campaign manager that's came online, a social media fellow that's came online that's doing great work for the campaign, starting to build it up. And we do need volunteers, and we do need people to step up and contribute. And that's why we're out here, because we're saying, yes, we will represent you, but we're going to need you to step up to the plate. And without that courage and without that willingness to be involved, we could pretty much just go ahead and, watch our country go down the drain.
Well, what's missing? Because I know that you have a tremendous overlap in belief in both of these candidates. What is missing? What is missing in these two candidates? And I would like you to be specific.
There are some disagreements we have. I do believe that while Iran is a threat, that the United States could let Israel go and give logistical support, and Israel can take care of that threat as an ally of ours.
So I'm sorry. So you're saying that we don't need to spend the money on Israel?
No, I'm not saying we don't need to help them out and give them some help.
Yeah.
Okay. Where we definitely do not need to spend any money is on countries that are enemies against us. But Israel is a sovereign nation, and they've shown more than time and time again that they can overtake foes 10 times and larger their size.
So you would like to, in other words, save that money and use it on something else?
Well, the first thing we need to do, Curtis, is we need to withdraw from the UN. We don't need to be in it at all. They're corrupt, they're wasting our tax dollars, and that's money that could be brought back home and could be put into a budget to where we could actually get a zero balanced budget. Israel...
Let's pick up hold that thought. Let's pick it up there when we get back. I'm here with Tim Wilkes. He's a Republican candidate in the 7th Congressional District of North Carolina. I'm Curtis Wright. On the Beat.
You're listening to Curtis Wright on The Beat on 980 The Wave and 640 WFNC.
We're back live here on The Beat, on mic with Tim Wilkes. And Tim Wilkes is running for the 7th Congressional District. Of course, this is the new lines, new maps. Now, because of that, he's facing a challenger in the primary. That's Senator David Rouser. Ilario Pantano is still in the race, of course. And I want to first, folks, wilkes4congress.com. Wilkes for that's a number 4 congress.com. He has a Facebook page, and he's going to give you a phone number at the end so you can contact him if you'd like to volunteer. So we'll get those nuts and bolts out of the way at the end. I was talking to you off mic, and again, I'm going to say it for my listeners. There is a competitor of yours in this race that deals were made and promises have been made. Deals have been made and promises have been made, and we're just in the primary season. So again, here we go again with, another Washington insider, and we're all just supposed to follow along, and and this is what we'll get. I'm tired of that. The grassroots conservative movement is tired of it, and I'm very disappointed in a number of people that are supporting this whole idea, and in fact, the people who made the deal, so-called new faces. And this was made also by this deal because of a piece of legislation. That, to me, is even more egregious. Your voice in this campaign and the last time is about returning this nation to God and our moral value system, if I have you correct, because I've been listening very carefully to you for a while, since you've been on the scene, and you and I bump into each other at all these different events, and I introduce you. And one, I respect you for that, because I believe, as Mr. Centaurum, how are we going to fix our problems unless we return to our moral value system? That's the foundation. And you also are talking about, I don't want to say corruption, but, bringing back a voice to the people through this representative seat. So talk to me about both of those, how important those are to you.
Well, the voice of the people is the utmost priority in the campaign, and that is because they're not being heard. And we have apathy in our country and in our state right now because people have given up. They said, well, I'm not being heard, so I'm just not going to vote. I'm not going to get involved.
So you believe that when you say not heard, that inside the Washington bubble, we're not being heard?
Absolutely not. No, sir.
No, okay, so what do you mean?
Well,
do you believe that we're being heard by these two candidates, your challengers?
I believe that...
The people, I should say.
I believe that some of it is hitting the ears and some of it is still bouncing off. Maybe it's because...
Are you in the race because you're afraid that because of that situation, it'll only get worse, or our voice will diminish if they're elected?
I'm in the race because I have had people come up to me and say we need a common sense voice who understands what it's like to go out, work a 40-hour, 50-hour work week, to budget your household, and to make sure that your family, your children, and your bills are taken care of before anything else comes forward. And that's what our government needs. We need to start paying our bills. We need to cut back on our budget. And we do need to make sure that we're accountable to the people. The Constitution says there's supposed to be a balanced budget every year by the Congress. They haven't done that in at least 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And this, we talk about this a lot, and you're not certainly going to get an argument with me. We all know what rolls downhill. I can't say it because the FCC will pull my plug, but it does roll downhill, and it's rolling from Washington to Raleigh to your local commissioners and right flat onto your kitchen table. And, I hear all the rhetoric. You know me. I'm in the midst of it. I mean, it's thick, it's wide, it's deep. But the bottom line is, do you really understand what it means when you don't have enough gas to get to work on Friday?
Oh, absolutely.
No, I mean, you're saying
right.
that.
That's correct. And I'm not trying to make a social class or a wealthy versus poor. I'm tired of the pitting of whether it be ethnicities against each other, social classes, or anything else. The fact is, we're Americans, we're North Carolinians, and if we don't unite now, we're going to lose even more of our liberties and even more of our voice. My wife asked me originally earlier this year, she said, what are you going to do for our children in government? Why would I want to vote for you? And what are you going to do? And it kind of hit me hard because it's my wife asking me that question. And that was probably 5 months ago. And about 2 weeks ago, I finally realized, like husbands sometimes do, we don't hear everything our wives say. I finally realized what she was saying. And what she was saying was, government has gotten into our lives. Government is telling us how we can raise our children, what they have to learn in schools. They are micromanaging our lives without our permission and have taken parental rights away, have taken our rights as citizens away. And it hasn't been in one fell swoop. It's been in slow increments to where people really haven't realized it. And what you have is you have people now that are second, third generation welfare maybe first generation welfare. And they have gotten accustomed to receiving that check and don't realize that they have become a slave to the government's stipulations for receiving that money. Anytime you receive something, it's never free. Mm-hmm. It's a requirement. You know, you're going to have to, if you're going to get unemployment, you're going to have to go look for a job. If you're going to receive welfare, you're going to have to make sure you meet X, Y, and Z requirement. And in doing so, they lose some of their freedoms and their liberties. And it's been done at such small steps that they haven't realized what freedoms they've truly lost.
I asked one of your challengers, Senator David Rouser, this question. I said, Senator, one of the problems I have with Mr. McIntyre is I'm tired of hearing about the vote. What I want is someone that goes door to door, is a pain in the neck, and twists arms. Because certainly Mr. McIntyre will do it on certain things by the way, when he was a whip for Nancy Pelosi. And he did that or he wouldn't have had his job. I want to know, will you be a guy that, are you going to say to me, after you're elected for 2 years, well, wait a second, I voted on this, I voted on that, or are you going to be able to also tell me, I went and banged on these doors, I went and made these phone calls personally, I twisted these arms?
Curtis, what you should expect from me, what the voters should expect from me, is the same thing that I've done throughout my life, which is I fight and I fight and I fight for what I believe in. So therefore, if there's legislation going through, or if I am writing legislation that's going through, I'm going to be beating on doors, I'm going to be talking to people, I'm going to be doing everything I can to get that through, and they're going to be tired of me. They're not going to want to see me at their door most of the time. That is, according to my wife, one of my good points and one of my bad points, because I'm stubborn and I'm dogmatic about making sure that when I believe in something, I stick with it. And I do everything I can. I had the same question from a gentleman that works with me out at Sunny Point right now. And he said, oh, you're going to get to Washington, you're going to forget all about us. And I looked at him, I said, I tell you what, Mr. Elton, I said, here's what we do. I said, when I get into office, you will have my number. And if I'm not meeting that criteria, you call me and tell me. And people think that's a hollow promise, but literally what I want to do is, number one, is go with the attitude of, if you're not going to allow me to read excuse me.
That's okay.
If you're not going to let me read the legislation, it's an automatic vote no. And there may be good things in that. But if it's so good, then why do you have to hide it from us to get it through? The people should be allowed to look at that legislation. The representatives should be allowed to read it, to go over it, to make sure it's constitutional. Make sure that it is not just supporting one small group, but all of the voters of North Carolina, or as many as you possibly can. And we haven't been doing that. And anytime that you see a no vote, one of the things I want to do is make sure that each day there is a list. Okay, we voted no, we voted yes. Here's why. And give that background.
Stay with us. I'm going to ask Tim if he could stay a little bit longer with us. Here on The Beat, I'm Curtis Wright. On Mike, Tim Wilkes, candidate on the Republican side for the 7th Congressional District. I'm Curtis Wright. We'll be right back.
Now from the studios of WFNC and WAAV, the man, the legend, the one who drives you crazy, Curtis Wright on the beat.
Wake up, southeastern North Carolina. This is Curtis Wright on the beat. WFNC 640 AM, WAAV 980 AM. It's Friday, and it's hour number 4, and this is our morning wrap till 10 o'clock, but we're extending our interview with Tim Wilkes. He's a candidate on the Republican side. He's got he has two challengers in the primary. That would be Republican Ilario Pantano and Republican State Senator David Rouser. Tim Wilkes, Republican, and talking about the voice of the people. And you and I were talking before we went into the long break about, how would you go about staying in touch with the people, make sure the connection was there, and maintain that connection with the average person. Which leads me to this. And as much as I may profess this on air, that's because I'm an eternal optimist and I don't know how to give up. This thing's a mess. It's a mess. This form of government, they talked about it last night. It's a mess. We have screwed it all up. Now, how we get back, I don't know, because we're like Hansel and Gretel that have gone into the second forest and never dropped the crumbs. I don't know how we get back, but I do believe it's going to take people who, one, understand the average working person, and two, believe in our founding principles, truly believe, and maybe I've got that backwards, and I also believe it's our Christian principles, returning to them and returning to God. But these are very, 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 very complex issues. So when I say I believe in the average man going and serving, doing his time, and going home, well, today it's so screwed up, we certainly have shown, and you made a comment about reading the bills, we certainly need people that understand these complex issues, because more times than not, sadly, they're screwing it up more than they are fixing it. So talk to me about that. How do you say to somebody, but you don't have the background, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the depth of understanding of accounting or maybe, on other issues, let's just say finance or things like that. What do you say to people like that?
Well, first thing I do is I look at them and tell them, our founders, farmers, small businessmen, they didn't have that when they started. It was a totally new animal to them. And they stood up, and because they were guided by these foundational principles, they were not only able to execute the job, but they were able to do it in a manner in which America thrived, and it survived, and it grew. So today, when people look at me and say the same thing, it's not a lack of my ability to think or to, for instance, critically think about the issues and look at who's going to be affected by a bill and make sure that the majority of the people of North Carolina are going to be taken care of. But it's the ability that I have to look at things in a simplistic manner, to break them down bare bones, and say yes or no. And what I found, Curtis, is if you go out into a farmland, you go into the mountains, you go into some place or someone's house that has a simple life. And I would challenge anyone, go into some household like this and try and tell them a lie and see how quickly they see through it. Say they see through it because they're living a simple life, which allows them to focus on the most important things. And by focusing on the important things, such as the Constitution, as focusing on the people, focusing on the ability for our economy to turn back around, or for our state to turn back around, and to get government out of our households and start holding not just government accountable, but people accountable. Parents are no longer held accountable.
When I entered business as a music major, although I had a background in some business and I had background in bringing people together and leading them and things, I still realized, which I had done even in my music career, that the people I surrounded myself with, the people I took counsel from, and attaching myself to people who became my mentors. Now, it doesn't mean I've just followed anything they said. I don't believe that's mentorship. Mentorship is someone who influences you, and then you take from them what's valuable for you to move on or develop your skills. How are you going to go out? Because you can't be a man sitting in a room with your legislative assistant and your 50 people on your staff. How are you going to, I'm sure you've thought about this. If today you were elected congressman from the 7th Congressional District, how are you going to go about plugging into a knowledge source or basis so that you can be most effective?
Well, we do have certain organizations. You have a heritage organization. You have John Locke. You have foundations out there that will be willing to assist with research they have. Of course, you don't take only that basis because everyone has, per se, an agenda. Now, Heritage Association, of course, is to bring us back to the Constitution, which is along lines with me. But you still have to check the sources. You have to make sure. I have some people on staff, on the campaign right now who are very godly, Christian young fellows that are wanting to see the nation seek God's face, but also see the nation return to its foundational principles. They're studying on it, and what we're doing right now is what we're going to do in office, and that is we break it down. And I may ask my campaign manager, okay, Matt, can you check out on this, and can you get some research done? That way we can go over it together and we can talk it out. Okay, George, can you do this? Camelia, can you take care of that? And then we sit down and we discuss it, and we make sure that it's in line, it's in association with what we want to achieve and what's going to be best for the people.
Now, stay with me, because when we come back, we'll finish up our discussion here with Tim Wilkes. He is a Republican candidate for the 7th Congressional District. We're going to pick it up there. And then again, I want to remind folks, it's Wilkes, 4, Congress.com, Wilkes4Congress.com. He's also on Facebook. And he's going to have a phone number for you here as well if you'd like to get in touch with him or volunteer. I'm Curtis Wright on The Beat.
There's more coming up with Curtis Wright on The Beat. This is Carolina's choice for great talk. 640 WFNC and 980 The Wave.
We're back live here on The Beat. I'm Curtis Wright. 9:22 in the morning. We're going to finish up our discussion here with Tim Wilkes, running in the 7th Congressional District, covering an awful lot of our listening area here in the morning on the morning show. Tim, so you're going to get to Washington, and you've told me a little bit about how you'll go about, getting up to speed and stuff. But let me tell you how it works. And we know this too well. They're going to come to you and say, well, you just got elected. Holy smokes. This is how you have to do it. Here's the person you need. Here's a group of people you need to talk to be your chief of staff. This is how you go about setting up your office. This is how you're going to communicate with the public. This is how you're going to do this. And then if you're Renee Elmers and you're from the grassroots group, and Renee, if you're out there listening, I'm sorry, Renee, you know this as well as I do. They're going to come and say, wow, that guy pulled that off, and he's from the grassroots. We need to get him in the inner circle because we need that for credibility. And I'm sad to say that Renee Elmers has allowed herself to do that. She knows how, and her people know how I feel about it. And, well, let's just put it this way. There's a lot of things that have been done now that we said we were never going to do, and people said, okay, then I'm voting for her. Well, guess what? We're doing them. So they're going to come to you, and they're going to say this. Well, you don't understand, Tim. This is how it works. If we want to get this, then we've got to give this. And if we want that, then we got to give them this. And we got to do this, we're going to have to do that. How are you going to deal with all this? Never have been involved in this bubble of Washington.
Well, I laugh at this because it is funny to me.
You know what I told you is absolutely true.
Absolutely.
They pulled, she ran, beat Etheridge, got in there. They immediately got her into the leadership. That gave credibility to the leadership. See, we love grassroots folks. Brought her in. Oh, my gosh. Now it's the same old thing I've told you before. You and I think, actually had this conversation once. First interview is, oh, Curtis, you don't understand. Okay, well, I've had 3 of those with Miss Elmers. And guess what? I didn't even know, and no one told us, that the deal they made last July, the President of the United States doesn't have to ask anybody anymore about getting a $1.2 trillion increase. We were sold out last year. So now this will be the 3rd increase that we were promised never would happen.
And supposedly the pipeline was in it, and he was going to approve the pipeline.
Right, and don't worry about it, Kurt. It's okay. We're going to give this, but we're going to get all this.
Which, of course, that pipeline, it was hypocrisy at its best, because he comes onto the news and says, well, I'm not going to do it because February 14th, they gave me a deadline. And that's like saying, well,
the deadline was part of the deal.
Right. It's the same thing as saying, I don't like what you're doing anymore, so I'm going to take my toys and go home.
So tell me, how are you going to deal with that? Because that's going to be your first day in office. They're going to come to you and tell you how it works, how you need to set up your office. This is the way it's going to be.
It's simple. And I can't swear to this because I haven't seen the file, but I'm almost positive in my military file it says does not play well with others. As a private to a sergeant, I ruffled feathers. I did not do things the way they expected. And when they come to me and say, this is what you have to do, I don't want anybody on my staff I don't know and I don't trust. Because if I don't know you, you could be telling me the truth. You could be leading me down the garden path the wrong direction. So therefore, I'm not going to trust you. Mm-hmm. I may have to take one person I don't know, and I won't know until I get into that position. I may have to take one person for a short period of time to ensure that we understand the system. But they also give you a quick session to where they say, okay, this is, and they send you basically through a quick course and say, here it is. So our goal is to take the people that we trust, that we know, that I can depend on every day, and that they can depend on me, not just as an individual, but as a person who can sit there and tell me, you're wrong. This is why.
Now, let's go further because I don't want to run out of time. So Rand Paul last week says this is ridiculous and gives back $500,000 of his office budget. This is absolutely ridiculous. And if I can, I'm going to find more money. This is bloated, these things. I talked to Senator Richard Burr a couple years ago, and he spent half of my show talking about how excited he was because of all the renovations he was doing to his office. Where will we find, and I'm telling you that's true. And I sat there with my mouth on the floor going, I can't believe a conservative would talk this way on the air. He would new drapes, paintings, new molding, new desks, and he was just happy as a little kid in a candy store. And here's Rand Paul saying, no, that's not the way government should run. Where will we find Representative Tim Wilkes?
Well, you might find me in a janitor's closet. I don't know. You'll find me sitting in whatever office they give me.
No, I mean, are you going to be one of those ones that digs through the budgets and says, how can I do my part?
Oh, absolutely.
It may sound like a rhetorical question, but it's not.
You're going to see me looking at ways that we're going to be able to save the taxpayers money. If it's not necessary, then why do we need to do it?
But someone's going to say to you, but everybody does it. You don't understand. This is just that you'd be just spitting in the wind.
I'm not everybody.
Okay.
And that's the thing that everybody says. And when you run for an office, you should be willing to be, we watched the movie Courageous last night. Mm-hmm. You should be courageous. You should be willing to stand up and say, this is right, this is wrong. And if you're not willing to do it, you don't need to run for office because you shouldn't be representing the people, Curtis.
We are out of time, but I want to make sure that we get this information out so people can connect with you. And certainly you and I are going to have these discussions, and we're planning our 3 stand-up-and-vote candidates forums for the 7th Congressional District, so that will involve the 3 Republican candidates. www.wilkes4, that's the number 4, congress.com. Facebook page, right?
Correct. You can look under Tim Wilkes or Tim Wilkes candidate. We have actually 2 of them for us.
And then give them the phone number and where they can contact you.
You can contact me personally, 910-368-5112. And don't be dismayed if it goes to voicemail. I may be at work, and as soon as I get the chance to call you back, I'll be more than happy to call you back. Shoot emails to us on the website or to us on Facebook. and we'll be more than happy to get in touch with you and not only find out what you're willing to do or how you're willing to help, but also get down and dirty and get the feet on the ground and make sure everybody gets involved.
Thank you. Tim Wilkes, running on the Republican side for the 7th Congressional District here in North Carolina. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Curtis Wright. We'll come back. We have plenty of time left on the morning wrap. Till 10 o'clock, 800-592-9228.